Do you have continuity or association plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Good evening and thanks for joining another exciting episode of Corporate Governance Platform, proudly brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals. I'm beaming live from MITV in Lagos. My name is Tunde Odeyemi. In the next couple of minutes, we'll be discussing corporate secretarial practice as a driver of corporate governance. And I have with me in the studio my guest who will be leading the conversation, Ms. EFOSA EWERE. EFOSA is a charter secretary and a dispute resolution practitioner. She is a partner with Gravidas Antonius, a law firm in Nigeria which has a bias for dispute resolution. Trained as a lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator, she adopts an innovative approach, engages actively, and regularly advises clients on the best dispute resolution mechanism to adopt on legal issues. She is a notary public, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, United Kingdom, Nigerian branch, a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN. She has acted as counsel in mediation proceedings and an ad hoc domestic arbitration in Nigeria. She participates as arbitrator at the Wilhelm C. Wyss Moot arbitration held annually in Vienna. EFOSA, it's nice to have you at Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odeyemi.
Okay. We'll be discussing corporate secretarial practice as a driver of corporate governance. And at this point, I would like to invite our viewers to be part of the show by asking questions or making comments. You are a secretary, you are a company secretary, a charter secretary out there. You want to know more about corporate secretarial practice. This is the time for you to ask questions. But you can only do this by text message, not by phone call. You send the text message to 080-2323-1287. I take the number again, 080-2323-1287. Please only text message, and if you send your text message, kindly put your name on it. EFOSA, corporate secretarial practice. What really do we mean by corporate secretarial practice?
Corporate secretarial practice involves an integral part of company that it involves the functions, discharge of the functions, the responsibilities of that company, and it goes down into the integral part of the administrative or activities or operations of that company for effective administrative affairs in line with the governance or the roles of governance in that company.
Okay, what then are the main elements of corporate secretarial practice?
Okay, well, you know, the corporate secretarial functions is actually to provide support for the board and the company, and that support must be provided at the requisite time or appropriate time where it's required, and it involves effective board management, it involves coordinating meetings, shareholders meetings, it involves coordinating board meetings, it involves regulation and governance practice, it involves providing advisory, and another elementary role, which is minutes taking. Okay,
you mentioned quite a lot. I think you mentioned about 4 or 5 elements there. Minutes writing is there, management of the
effective management
of shareholders,
yes, board management, then coordinating shareholders meetings.
Okay, how then does a corporate secretarial practice add value or contribute to corporate governance?
Well, for corporate governance, we're all aware that corporate governance is the way and manner in which a company is controlled and managed. Okay. So for that company secretary, that company secretarial function, it is actually to provide that bridge that bridge in communication, that bridge in effective dissemination of information, that bridge between the company, the board, and its members. So in discharging these functions, these secretarial functions, it helps to create a culture for the company. And in creating that culture must align with the governance practice, policies, and procedures of that company. And it would, in turn, help in the effective administration of the company.
It will help effective administration of the company. Also enhances corporate governance.
Yeah, where the culture of the company aligns with corporate governance policies in that company.
Okay, you actually mentioned minutes writing as part of the elements of corporate secretarial practice.
Yes, I did.
Now, what are the importance of good minute writing skills to corporate secretarial practice?
The importance of good minute writing skills cannot be overemphasized. With a company, we're all aware that decisions of companies would arise from corporate meetings.
Okay.
So if you do not have or do not take accurate records or proper records of your minutes, then it means it could be misleading in the affairs of the company. So where you have good minutes writing, it could help in historical development of that company, because it means you can go back to your records and check up for events that have happened in the past. It could also help or guide the affairs of the company, knowing whose task it was to do certain things, particularly when it comes to the action points. Then minutes writing, since it's actually a legal requirement for every company, plays a vital role too in the whole process of administration of that company. So it's very important that your minutes must be properly taken accurately, and good minutes writing can be said to be done properly by charter secretaries.
Okay, good minutes writing can be said to be done by charter secretary. Now, talking about secretary, what are the roles of company secretaries in corporate secretarial practice?
The roles of company secretaries are a lot, but if I want to be specific, first it starts with the fact that company secretaries are very important in the affairs of any company, in the operations of any company. And in discharging that function, in discharging those roles, they must report to the board on compliance issues, compliance with the acts, compliance with the rules, compliance with applicable laws of that company, because you would agree with me that there are companies that have peculiar laws or specialized companies, so there must be laws that must be complied with by those companies, and it's the duty of the charter secretary or the duty of the company secretary to be on top of that. Another function comes with managing meetings.
Okay. Meetings
with the board, meetings with stakeholders. You must ensure that all those who are eligible to receive notices of minutes get them. You must ensure that those who are supposed to sign those minutes do them within the prescribed time. You must also ensure that the minutes are properly taken. You must ensure that notices go out early enough. Then another role too is managing stakeholders. It's important for you to maintain a good relationship with the stakeholders.
Is it with the stakeholders or with the shareholders now?
Stakeholders, shareholders, all encompassing.
Okay. You have actually mentioned the role of company secretaries in corporate secretarial practice. I want to bring in corporate governance. What then are the roles of company secretaries in corporate governance?
In corporate governance, basically, they serve as a sounding board.
Okay.
They serve as a sounding board, more like a reminder of the events or the rules, and I would say compliance with certain rules, certain procedure, things that the company ordinarily should comply with. Okay. But then it must align with the objectives of the company. And it's important that the company secretary at every point in time plays that role as a sounding board for effective governance of any company.
Okay, still talking about company secretary and corporate secretarial practice. I want to take you to CAMA, CAMA 2020.
Yes.
the Act says recognizes 3 professionals: the charter secretaries, lawyers, and accountants as company secretaries for public limited companies. And from time to time, ICSAN, Institute of Charter Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, the trainers of charter secretaries, have said the charter secretaries are best suited and fitted for the role of company secretaries. Can you make comments on this?
I would say I kind of agree, and honestly, I'm not talking from the angle that the lawyers or the accountants are not knowledgeable in their skill, but because I've had a taste of both worlds, I can actually attest that if that's the position of ICSAN, then they are right at it. And I'll give you an elementary example.
Okay.
With the trainings you go through with ICSAN, there's a particular course that is known as corporate financial management. Usually in that class, you find out that the lawyers find it new being introduced to financial management that has figures and accounting figures, while the accountants are comfortable with that particular subject of that particular course.
Good.
But when you go down to the areas on company secretarial matters, you find out that most times where the laws are being talked about or being taught, the accountants seem to also shy away. But then you are brought into a class where you have a mix, or you are compelled to learn these skills or learn these courses or learn these ropes that would eventually help you in your professional field. So you have a mix of some accounting procedures, you have a mix of your legal procedures, and you have people in that same class who are lawyers, who are accountants. So it means that there's something going on right there.
Okay.
So with that mix, I can say that that has actually produced or would support the position that ICSAN has produced.
The charter secretaries are best suited
for such professions because of that experience, because of that skill acquired from the training.
Okay, I have a text message from Mrs. Bimba Akintola. She says, thank you, guest. She said, as a company secretary, can a company secretary be referred to as a member of the board? That is the question.
It depends on I'll say the charter of that company. It depends on the charter of that company. It depends on the appointment or the appointment basically that has brought in that secretary. So it could be a very dicey response to give at this point, because for each company it may be peculiar. Some secretaries are actually also directors of the company.
Okay, it depends on the company. Okay, let me also take you to this. Who are the professionals in public secretarial practice, and what exactly are their roles in the Nigerian economy?
Okay, when we talk about secretarial practice, most times people have had their minds to in-house company secretaries.
Okay.
But then you actually have people who are in public practice, who have established firms, who provide secretarial practices to the public. So those are the people you now term as public secretarial practitioners.
Practitioners, okay.
But then also for ICSAN, ICSAN has tried to be at the forefront in pushing and encouraging those in such areas to practice effectively and promote the use of public secretarial practice, even if you are not in-house. Even with the Code of Corporate Governance, there's a provision, I think Principle 14, that talks about board evaluation, and also giving that opportunity to external practitioners to evaluate a board, because the provision provides that once in every 3 years there should be a board evaluation of a company, and it should be done by an external practitioner. Yeah, okay. So that also exposes that part of public practice. So then if you are providing services to the public, then it simply means that you're also contributing to the growth of the nation, because whatever informed decisions, whatever advice, whatever services you're rendering to the public in turn is, creating very good room for national growth.
Okay, still on public secretarial practice. These are companies that are outsourced. You can get them to come and work for you. Can a public secretarial practitioner work for two competing companies?
On the issue of, when you say competing company, it depends on what services they are rendering.
Okay.
It depends on what services
What I mean by two competing companies, if they are in the same sector of the economy, same industry.
If first there are ethics that govern, because that's why we bring in ICSAN again, because ICSAN has a code of ethics. So there are ethics that govern any professional. I think the professional should be able to tell if there's a conflict. If there's a conflict, then it will be nice and responsible to withdraw from such a service. But if you see that whatever services you're providing for this company is very different from what you're providing for the next company, I don't see why you should not go ahead with it. But I also think that there is a responsibility on you to ensure that you do not divulge information of one company to the other. You should keep confidential whatever services you're rendering to this company to the other, from the other company, and vice versa. Okay,
as long as you remain ethical, you can do it.
It's very important to be ethical.
Okay. What are the qualities of a good corporate secretarial practitioners?
The qualities are a lot. I would start with the fact that a good practitioner should be methodical, have good eye for detail, should be objective in proceedings here I mean in delivering your duties. You should have good emotional intelligence. You should be a good team player, because it's important that there should not be toxicity around your services. You should ensure that you have good communication skills. You should ensure that you what other thing again? Okay, you should ensure that at every point in time, whatever services you're rendering should be done in an orderly manner.
Okay.
It's very important to be organized and coordinated in whatever services you are rendering.
Okay, you actually mentioned quite a lot of qualities, from being methodical to being organized and being orderly. Okay, let me come back to ICSAN. ICSAN as an institute train people to be charter secretaries, who eventually are corporate secretaries. Now, apart from training people on corporate secretarial practice, does ICSAN has a form of continuous education exercise for practitioners to continue to enjoy even while they are in practice?
Yes, they do. They have a lot of them. They usually have a calendar every year,
okay,
where they have a list of various topics, themes to sensitize and train members of the public, either their own members, which will serve as a refresher course, or for professionals who are interested in certain areas of interest that they have chosen to train on. And it's usually a continuous process. You don't qualify with ICSAN and go to sleep. There's always one training or the other available, some free, some are paid for, that it's open to both you as a practitioner and to the general public.
Okay, let me ask this question before I wrap up on this conversation. You actually mentioned the fact that charter secretaries are most suitable when it comes to corporate secretarial job. What advice do you give lawyers, accountants, even though by Common Act of 2020 they are qualified to act as company secretaries? What advice do you give lawyers, accountants out there, or any other profession in becoming a charter secretary?
Well, I would say knowledge never lost.
Okay.
It's important that we keep growing. Just like the words of Albert Einstein, it says life is like a bicycle. To maintain your balance, you have to keep moving. So we're in an evolving world. Rules are evolving, laws are evolving, practice is evolving. So it's important that you get that skill. I would say for sure that it's never been, I've never looked back and regretted ever taking that step. So it's very important to hone your skills in the profession, to take part in these trainings and keep moving and helping to grow the profession.
I'm actually coming to you because you're a lawyer and of course you're also a chartered secretary as a member of ICSAN. What motivated you from, because as a lawyer you can be a company secretary.
True.
Right. What motivated you to now go into corporate secretarial training for you to become a practitioner and a professional?
Okay. This is one question that I find very difficult to answer sometimes, but thank God you read out my profile. And I described myself as a dispute resolution practitioner.
Yes.
That was my first call, or my first calling. I worked in a law firm where what was only practiced was litigation.
Okay.
And as I grew in the profession, I had friends, I had family members that would ask you certain questions or want you to perform certain roles as an external company secretary for them. It had to do with regulation, it had to do with advisory. I knew I was deficient because I was working in a place where I was gathering experience, but gathering experience only in the litigation field and dispute resolution field. So I decided to take up the exam course, and it actually opened my eyes, because your training as a lawyer, yes, it would be referred to as general practice, that you've been trained as a lawyer and you are expected to know it all. But the truth is, we really do not always know it all, and continuous training is very important in this field. And I had to take on the course with the Institute of Chartered Secretaries, and I would say it opened my eyes to a lot of things that I was not exposed to at the time from the firm I was working with.
Okay, I have a question from somebody without a name here. Good day. Is there any difference between a confidential secretary and a corporate secretary?
The confidential secretary, I would say it has to do with the designation. I would recall that even with CAMA, secretaries were never referred to as confidential. I think that word would just apply to certain companies in terms of how they create designation for certain roles. So it's actually the roles you perform that would distinguish both terms that you've used, whether the confidential secretary or the corporate secretary. But what we know is that the corporate secretary, we know the functions of the corporate secretary, but when you say confidential secretary, sometimes if you look through the job responsibilities of that confidential secretary, you find out that it may not necessarily be carrying out the function of a corporate secretary. It may be carrying out the function of maybe even an executive assistant who is expected to keep certain things confidential.
Good. You have told us about how you were motivated into going for chartered secretaries training or corporate secretarial training. What is your advice for those that are aspiring to become a corporate secretarial practitioner or professional?
Take up the course with ICSAN. Take up they actually have, I think, 2 modules, 2 sessions every year. So go in, take up the courses. You have, for those that are lawyers, you have 4 courses. For those that are non-lawyers, I think you have to do more. But I think for accountants too, it's about 4 courses. So whichever of those professions you find yourself, you are open to take up these courses and do it. You can do it at your pace. It doesn't necessarily mean you must write all the courses all at once. So I did mine at my own pace, did them one by one, and
you passed?
Yes, I did.
For the sake of the viewers that are looking at us, is it a very difficult exam to pass?
It could be tasking.
Okay.
Honestly, it could be tasking. Particularly I won't even deny that the financial management wasn't a tough one. But at the end of the day, we had to scale.
But it's surmountable.
Exactly.
Okay, you've had it. But somebody has been contributing. Let me just take time to read some of the messages from this contributor. He said, confidential secretary or administrative secretary. He said confidential secretary or administrative secretary. And he also mentioned where we talked about if a company secretary can be a member of the board. He says secretary can be part of the board, especially when the required value is possessed by her. It's a contribution from a viewer that I also feel that we should also recognize. Thank you very much for being part of it. EFOSA, it's like we should just continue to discuss corporate secretarial practice, but time is not very much on our side. We have to wrap it up here. Thank you for being part of today's program.
Thank you for having me.
And all our viewers, we thank you for being part of today's program, especially those that sent text message. The contributor, thank you for sending those contributions, and the other person that we didn't have the name that asked between the difference between confidential secretary and company secretary. Thank you very much for being part of the program. We invite you to join us next week, same station, same time. I remain Tunde Odeyemi. Keep spreading the gospel of corporate governance, and bye for now.
There should still be repercussions.
Do you have continuity or association plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.